Hi guys, what's up? Welcome back to another video. Today you join me in the 2023 Genesis GV70 Electrified. Now this is effectively a posh Hyundai, and if you don't know about the Genesis brand, it's definitely coming up as a really great alternative to some of the German rivals. This particular car here is kind of alongside the BMW iX3 and also the Mercedes EQC. They're probably its two main rivals. So I'm here today to tell you whether this is worth your consideration instead. So before we actually go into the details about this car and the review, let's talk a little bit about Genesis themselves and the buying experience. Genesis is to Hyundai as Lexus is to Toyota. It's their kind of upmarket luxury brand, and it's definitely taken some great inspiration from the designers of Bentley. As a result, I think the styling is really posh and upmarket. Obviously, the beauty of that is you do get the same sort of reliability as you do with a brand like Hyundai or Kia. So when you buy a Genesis, one of the many benefits is that you get a 5-year care plan included in the price. Now that involves your servicing, but not only that, they'll deliver the car to you, they'll drop it off, they'll also give you a courtesy car for the duration of the time that the car's away, and you don't have to worry about taking it anywhere at all. It also includes 5 years of breakdown assistance, also includes 5-year warranty. But that's just if you get a normal Genesis. If you get an electrified one, the benefits continue, but you also get subsidised charging across the Ionity charging network. So your fast charges at many service stations might be a lot cheaper than you think. And you also get access to all of the Shell network as well. Now, of course, we'll talk a little bit about specs and pricing. I'm not going to go too heavy on this because there is so much to choose from, but the Genesis configurator is one of the best that I have used. It's so interactive, it really works well, and it breaks down all of the options. So the standard GV70 comes in either a petrol or a diesel variant here in the UK. You can either have a 2.2 litre diesel, which is a 4-cylinder diesel, 201 horsepower, an 8-speed automatic and 4-wheel drive as standard, or you can get a 2.5 litre turbo petrol with 304 horsepower, but slightly less torque, and that one also is 4-wheel drive and 8-speed auto. So those ones start from around £42,000, and there's a couple of trim options there. There's the premium, the sport and the luxury. The premium actually comes with tons of kit as standard, and that is your base spec. So that comes with stuff like this wonderful 14.5-inch navigation screen, which I've got on this one. It's standard across the range. An 8-inch digital driver's cluster, reversing camera. There's also a fingerprint recognition system for the different drive profiles, electric seats, dual zone climate control, dual LED lights, leather as standard as well with electric front seats, keyless entry. The list honestly goes on. Now the two trim levels above that, effectively they go up a couple of grand each, and they're mainly for styling purposes, but also they include things like heated steering wheel, heated seats. So it might be worth looking if you can spec one of those up. It might be worth seeing if you can just splash that extra couple of grand to get all the fancy bits. But where you really want to spend your money is options. Unfortunately, the main option pack isn't standard across any of the range, and that is the innovation pack. And that includes some really crucial bits, I think, that you'd really want on this car, such as the wonderful blind spot monitoring assist, which has cameras, also the lane keep with the more active highway assist. This digital driver's cluster in front of me is the larger 12.3-inch version, which is 3D as well, which you can turn on or off. A nice head-up display, which includes blind spot monitoring assist on there as well, and a few different bits of information, such as your traffic sign recognition, wireless phone charging, smart parking assist, and also being able to drive the car in and out of the space on the key. And also the surround view camera, which is better than just the standard reverse cam. The surround view is one of the top down view ones, and it also has a 3D view. They're both absolutely exceptional, some of the best in the business, and they make parking this car so much easier. So that's something I would recommend. However, it is over 3 grand, so it's about 3.5 grand for the EV, and for some reason it's even more on the standard petrol and diesel versions, over 4. There's a couple of other options as well, which I say are really worth having, but again, price permitting. You've got the panoramic roof, which I've got installed on this model. That one is about £1,400. And you've also got the Lexicon audio system, which is absolutely sensational. That is £790. But the key with that is it also includes a active noise cancellation system. So it's got loads of microphones in here along the roof line. And what it does is it picks up some of the exterior noise, and it will help pump some noise cancelling through the cabin to make it seem a little bit quieter and more refined. It's definitely not the best I've ever heard in a car, but it's not too far off. It really is fantastic. Loads of bass, loads of kick. You can feel it in the floor of the car, and there's a nice surround effect to it as well. So this car that I'm in today also has the Napa leather pack, which has much softer leather and all this diamond quilting. Also included in this car is the comfort seat pack, which includes electric bolsters and also a massage function. But the one we're here to talk about today isn't the standard car, it's the electrified model. Now this electrified one only comes with one configurable motor option, which is a dual motor, 4-wheel drive, and it's 490 horsepower combined. It's rapid. It will do 0 to 60 in around 4 seconds, which is great for a car that weighs 2,300 kilos. Over 2 tons, and it shifts that quick. That's pretty good. And the combined range as well, 283 miles is the official figure. Now in the cold weather and with a relatively heavy foot, I've been getting more like 200 to 210, but I still don't think that's actually that bad for a car of this size. In terms of economy, it equates to roughly 3 miles per kilowatt hour in my experience. The thing is though, the electric one is a big jump up in price. It starts from £65,000. This one that I'm in is completely specced up and it's just shy of 80. That's a bit eye-watering, isn't it? So it does work out slightly more expensive than a BMW iX3, but I don't know, there's something about this, it's more opulent, it's more elegant. I just think it's a little bit classier. There's also the Mercedes EQC, that's a good option. And I suppose another rival that's a little bit bigger would be the Audi SQ8 e-tron, but that is a lot more expensive. But I'd say that in terms of actual quality, this feels comparable to that as opposed to the other two cars. So let's talk about the styling of the GV70. I think it's quite a handsome car, and you can definitely see the Bentley inspiration across the Genesis lineup, and that's no bad thing. They look really classy. I love the front grille design, I love the badge, and I just think they look quite upmarket. I've never been too keen on the rear ends of them, but they are growing on me and they are functional as well. I like how to open the boot you just press a button underneath the wiper instead of having to get your hands dirty feeling around under the ledge. I also like how in the front, to open the charging door, it's very much hidden in the grille. You can't see it at all unless you really look for it. It took me a second. It's better than some ugly door just stuck to the bumper. This one is finished in Seville Silver, which is a £750 metallic paint option. You can get it in flat white as standard, which is just your standard paint option. Then you've got metallic options. And I also do like the fact there are 2 options, grey and green, for matte paint. It's a bit more expensive, but it does look good with the larger 20-inch wheels as an option. This particular one has the standard 19-inch wheels, which I don't think is too great. Like, it's going to be better for ride quality and economy, yes, but I do think for such an expensive car that's this imposing on the road, I do think that the larger wheel option would turn more heads. I also don't think this is quite as handsome as its big brother, the GV80. It's just a more imposing car. It's larger, it's more bling, it's got massive wheels on it, and it looks really, really good. It looks a bit like a Bentley Bentayga. I've got a full review of one of those on the channel, so if you want to check that out, have a check in the description below. Step inside the GV70 and you're greeted with all of Hyundai's best tech, but draped in fine materials. Everything in here oozes quality. Everything's soft to the touch. You've got contrast stitching everywhere, ambient lighting everywhere, which is full RGB. And even right down here, there's no cheap, crappy plastics. It's all like squidgy right down the bottom. The only place there is actual normal hard plastic is inside the door bins, just for waterproofing. The ergonomics are pretty good too. Everything's well thought out. I can rest my elbows nicely, get a fantastic driving position with good visibility, and everything just feels nice to the touch. I can rest my arm completely flat on this armrest, and I've got access to the control dial for the transmission and also the control dial for the infotainment. They can get a little bit confused at times if you're in a rush trying to go between drive and reverse. That can be a little bit frustrating, but it's a small nitpick. A lot of the controls and dials are aluminium, and you can really feel the quality to them. They're cold and they've got that heft to them. The seats look great. It's got this diamond quilting pattern to it and some contrast stitching. Really comfortable, a little bit firm, I would say, but the ergo seat option helps with that. So that's part of that comfort seat pack, and I would recommend it just on the basis that you've got a lot more adjustment there. So I can get this exactly where I want it. I've got loads of adjustment in terms of thigh support, electric lumbar, 4-way, and also the ergo motion button down on the right hand side here, so I can activate the massage at any stage. And also I've got controls for the electric bolsters, which squeeze in as well. They're also automatic. When you go into boost mode, it will hug you in, and also when you're at high speed on the motorway, it just squeezes you ever so gently. Everything is fairly well laid out. I can control everything in front of me on this dashboard here from the steering wheel, so there's a few options I can cycle through to look at my drive information and things like that. This one is part of the innovation pack, and it is the 12.3 with the 3D. So I've got it set to 3D at the moment. It's a really cool effect. It makes certain parts of the text pop out at you, so it's quite interesting. It kind of gives it this effect that it looks like there's multiple layers to it, but you can turn it off, and if you turn it off, it makes the screen a little clearer because the sort of parallax effect gives it a slightly pixelated look. But the screen itself is very bright and crisp, so that is just something that you can turn optionally on or off, or you can change the depth of that 3D, but I quite like it. I think it adds something to the display. It's quite a simple layout as well. It shows your charge status, it shows you some basic drive information or media information, and the more interesting bit really is on the head-up display. The head-up display will tell you if there's something in your blind spot. It also shows you traffic sign recognition and information about your cruise control and speed cameras and things like that. What I love about the Hyundai infotainment stuff is that it tells you what's going on. If I change the wipers, for example, it tells me what's going on screen. If I change the lights, it shows me on screen what I've pressed. There's also one touch button on the steering wheel for automatic lane steering, which I love. I love that across all Hyundai, Kia, Genesis products. It's all fantastic. You just press it once, the car just starts steering itself, and when you want to turn it off, you press it once again. There's no messing about, no fiddling. Brilliant. There's a mode select button on the steering wheel and down here as well. That will also do your drive terrain assist. And also there's a hill descent assist, which is down on my right hand side by my knee, as well as some basic controls for your traction control. Another thing I love about all of these cars is that you've got paddles on the steering wheel which controls your regen braking. By default it starts up somewhere in the middle in an automatic mode, and what it will do is it will just kind of regulate based on your driving, and I find this to be the best. There is a bit of regen braking when you take your foot off the accelerator, but not much. You still have to use the brake manually, but you can put it all the way into iPedal mode, which is a single pedal driving, much like a Tesla or something like that, where it will come to a complete stop with one pedal. You don't have to use the brake at all unless in emergency. So there is that. Or you can use the other paddle, free it up completely manually so that you're in no regen braking at all effectively, and you control the car as if it was just a normal car. And you can go on the fly between those modes just by pressing the paddles up or down. It's a fantastic feature, and it means you can adjust the driving style based on the situation. I love it. The climate controls are pretty good. You've got some physical dials there and some physical buttons. The physical buttons do feel a little bit cheap, but it's not the end of the world. You do have a dial for the temperature, which is great. And then there's some information on the screen about the ventilation. Also, it will close the vents when you go through a tunnel, which is a really nice touch. And you've got information about your ventilated and heated seats on there, and some touch controls for those, including a touch control for your heated steering wheel. Now, it's a shame that the heated steering wheel button isn't on the steering wheel, but I wouldn't see where you could put it, to be fair. So I kind of forgive it for that. There is, however, a star button on the steering wheel and a star button on these controls down here by the hazard switch, and they are your shortcut buttons. You can customize them to whatever you want. Again, really cool touch. That changes based on drive profile as well. So you can either use your fingerprint or use your different guest modes to control who's using the car. So if you've got multiple people who use the car regularly, you can set it all up exactly how you want it and sort it out with one button when you get in. Of course, being Hyundai, the infotainment is absolutely flawless. I love it to bits. It's really modern looking. This massive wide screen up here is actually a touch screen. It's quite far away though. I wouldn't like to use it while driving, but thankfully they've implemented this nice crystal looking controller down here. It's very similar to BMW's iDrive. So you've got a back, home and menu button, which are physical controls. That's a warning telling me there's a speed camera coming up. And I can control it using the dial. I can nudge the dial left and right, or use the top as a touchpad as well. So really useful. There's loads of input options, and it means you can use it quite comfortably while driving. You don't have to mess about with the touchscreen. But the touchscreen, of course, is quite useful for the passenger, so they might want to interact with it that way. And it is an option. I can lean over and do different bits and bobs. At the moment, I've got full Apple CarPlay up, with next to it a weather widget, so you can kind of customize it as you wish. There's a few different options there. You don't have to have the weather. You can also have sports information. You can also have sat nav there, but I like to have the weather there just because it looks really nice. You can also just default back to a nice home screen, which gives you a bit of weather information and a sort of a silhouette of the maps. It looks really classy. Absolutely love the design of it. I love the typeface. It's modern, it's crisp, it's intuitive. It never ever crashes, and it's always absolutely butter smooth. No lag, no animation lag. Fantastic. Also, there's a few nice touches. As I mentioned, all my Kia Hyundai stuff, you've got like quiet mode, so you press that and it puts the speakers only to the front. So if you've got kids asleep in the back, you don't disturb them. Fantastic. Also, there's a voice memo function, so if you're driving along and you need to remember something, you can sort that out. Super easy. I quite like the rotary dial for gear select as well. It's probably not the best option, to be honest. Like, I prefer maybe the mouse style slider in Nissans and stuff like that. There's a few different cars that I prefer, but it's still okay. The only complaint, as I mentioned, was that it's literally right next to the other rotary dial, so sometimes I'll just grab the wrong one in a panic. But I've got to say, everything is just so lovely in here, so lovely to touch and feel. Even the carpets are nice. You've got these knurled aluminium bits everywhere for your controls. Feels really good. And of course, because it's all Hyundai stuff, it's quite familiar, and it's, you know, really tech heavy. There's so many safety systems on here. I've got, now I'm indicating, I've got the blind spot monitoring camera up, which shows me if there's anything just behind me, which is a really good touch. It works really well. I like how the vents continue all the way along as well and kind of transition into a nice piece of aluminium into the door. It just looks really good. And you've got ambient lighting absolutely everywhere, which I've got set currently to Premier in Purple, which looks lovely. And that's not its official name, by the way, but you've got some kind of nice bits in the door here. It goes down into the door bins. You've got it along the top of the door, all around the dash. There's so many different parts that have that lighting. You can customize it to any color you like. It looks great. I could do a fantastically long journey in this. It is supremely comfortable. I'm about 6 foot and I've got quite a decent bit of headroom, even with my seat in this very high position. Legroom is great, thigh support great. There's some cup holders, there's a copious amount of storage in this center console area. The glove box, well, it's not the biggest, but it's not the worst either. And the door bins are a reasonable size. It fits my bottle perfectly. Up here, I've got some nice touch controlled lights, and I've also got the controls for the sunroof and some nice big visors, which are kind of Alcantara wrapped. It's like a sort of suede headliner material I've got in here, which is a contrast colour, just like the seatbelt, which I think is quite a nice touch. It stops it being too dark and dingy in here and makes it a little bit more upmarket. Now, I do think it's a bit of a shame that you only get this sport trim on the electric model. There's none of the other trim options, so you're kind of stuck with this look, which I kind of prefer the more luxury looking versions of the Genesis cars with the bigger wheels and more chrome and stuff like that. So overall, just top marks for quality in here. The only disappointment I have really, and this is being quite picky, is that in the wireless phone charger, it's like a kind of a sloped phone charger. So I like that because it's easy to put my phone in and out of. But it's only USB-A. There's no USB-Cs in here, which I find quite odd considering the myriad of other technology. I've even got like all the front collision assist stuff. It does bong and beep at you a little bit, but it's not quite as bad as some of the other Hyundai Kia stuff that I've found. I think it's been fine-tuned in this a little bit to be a bit less distracting. And of course you can go in and disable the speed warnings and things like that, should you so wish. In terms of rear space, for the rear passengers, you're looking at a pretty decent size, to be fair. There's lots of headroom, lots of support back there, and the seats are a little bit adjustable, so you've got some pretty happy rear passengers. In the normal GV70, there is a massive transmission tunnel, so it wouldn't be ideal for 3 adults. But in this one, there's a small hump, but it's not too bad at all. Back there, you get some more USB charging, and you also get a 3rd zone climate control with the options that this car has. But the quality extends back there. All of the materials on the door cards and everything, the ambient lighting, it all extends to the rear, and it looks really good. The cargo area is very similar to its German rivals. In this battery-powered version, there is a little bit less space, but not significantly so that it's going to cause you too many problems. There's no load lip, and the rear seats do fold completely flat. There are levers from the back to do that, which make it really easy from the rear of the car, but the only downside is I think at this price point I would have liked to have a button to electrically raise the rear seats back up. But overall, it is super easy to get stuff in and out, and you can also store your cargo cover underneath the floor as well, which is really good. This particular car is equipped with vehicle to load, which is a £900 option, which is quite steep, I think, but it does mean that you can power stuff off of the car's battery. So in the boot, there is a plug socket which you can use to power things. Right, so let's talk about performance then and how this thing actually drives. I'm going to take this roundabout a little bit lively here. Let me put it down into sports mode, so the dash changes, the throttle response changes, and things all sharpen up a little bit. So it's 4-wheel drive. Oh, get a bit of understeer there. Wow. Now, at the moment, I've not got any of the artificial sounds on. You can pump in, if you want, artificial EV sound that creates that sort of whir, or a futuristic sound, or a traditional engine sound, which is a bit of a drone, which I didn't like. But I've currently got it off, which is its quietest mode. Just because I wanted to test how refined it is, really. And it is in here, it is very refined. In terms of the cabin noise, the active noise cancelling from the Lexicon sound system really does help. And also you've got laminated glass, which makes a big difference too. There is a little bit more tyre noise than I would like, especially on these smaller 19-inch wheels. But overall, I've got the sound system cranked in this most of the time anyway, the 15 speaker surround system with the Lexicon audio. In terms of just cruising along, obviously you've got some great features like the lane keep assist, which you just heard beep at me. You've got single button lane steer driving, and it is really smooth and lovely. You've got loads of power delivery, so if you want to just suddenly stamp on it, wow, yeah, loads of torque, and you can get out of any situation. It's really great. But it is smooth and refined, being an EV. Like, it's really, really smooth linear power delivery, loads and loads of torque whenever you need it, and when you're going along comfortably, it's just a really smooth, lovely experience. The suspension isn't too soft either. The only time it really wallows is when you come to a complete stop, which is my one annoyance with the driving experience in this car. With the braking, the brakes feel pretty good, so they don't feel spongy and horrible like in many EVs. They do feel quite responsive, but they are very sensitive at low speed, so you have to be quite gentle with them. And when you are quite gentle with them, when you're crawling at low speed, you get this little groan, which I'll demonstrate now. So that's a little bit annoying, but also when you come to a complete stop, the car doesn't really self-level very well. It sort of wobbles about a bit, which can be a little bit annoying at first. I've gotten used to it after just a few days, but just something to bear in mind. So I'm just comfortably cruising along now. I could do big miles in this, and of course you're limited by the range. As I say, realistically about 200 miles if you're driving it sort of semi-sensibly and having a little bit of fun here and there. So, you know, obviously that's based on being a bit cold as well, and up to 280-ish miles maybe in absolutely ideal conditions. But, you know, I don't think it's the end of the world. Like, it depends on your usage, right? If you're going to be doing like 400 or 500 mile trips almost daily, then it's impractical to have an EV anyway. We know this. But if you're not doing that many miles, then this is ideal because you've got access to so many chargers, especially at subsidised rates. You know, it's so many benefits, and you've got such a great warranty as well. You go with one of the rivals like the BMW or the Mercedes, I don't think the after sales is going to be quite as good, and I don't think you're going to be looked after for quite as long, especially in terms of servicing. You're going to have to take the car somewhere, you might not get a great courtesy car and all this, whereas Genesis sort all that stuff out for you. What I do want to do though now is take it to some twisty roads and see how it performs, because this is a big old car. But first, I think we should test out that 490 horsepower and that 700 newton meters of torque, don't you? Let's do a 0 to 60. Right then. 2.3 tons, 490 brake horsepower. Let's hit boost and let's launch it. Whoa! Torque steer, do you see that? Wow, that's fast. That is extremely fast. You have such a big heavy car, it really does move. And even when you're up to speed and you engage that boost, wow, it's just there. In terms of handling, what I do like about it, there is some texture through the wheel, which is really nice, because a lot of cars are completely devoid of that now. A lot of cars, you don't feel the road at all. And even though this is electrically assisted, I do feel stuff through the steering wheel. And that is something I really, really like. That being said though, there is quite a bit of torque steer, which is unusual for a four-wheel drive car, but I suppose with this much torque, it's kind of to be expected in a way. Wow, yeah, see? I went round a corner there and then the back kind of started to wiggle around under the torque. Brakes take a second to really kick in hard, but they are quite good. Now, in terms of the turning, there is a bit of a delay with this chassis. Like I do that and the car kind of snakes a little bit. It kind of just does a little wiggle. So it's not as direct as something like a BMW. So, you know, I do think in terms of the, you know, the driving, wow, can't get enough of that. I think in terms of the actual driving experience, if handling is what you're going for, that's where this falls a little bit short. This is more on the realms of kind of an all-rounder, a bit more on the luxury side than it is a real true B-road basher. You can feel the weight on a road like this, and you know, you can feel that the steering isn't quite as direct as some of its slightly sportier rivals. So I think that's kind of where the disappointment would lie. If you do a lot of country roads and stuff like that, or if you do, you know, you want to try and really take this car to its limit, it's not designed for that. Yes, it's got loads of power, loads of torque. The torque is absolutely ludicrous. And this is just without using boost. So yeah, you're using effectively like sort of 420-ish horsepower without the boost. And the boost is only active for 10 seconds. And you can use it as many times as you want, but I don't know why it's like that. I don't know whether it's just to add a bit of drama. You know, when you press the button, it's in an awkward place as well on the steering wheel. It's a 3-spoke steering wheel and it's right at the bottom. So you have to take one hand off the wheel and mash it down here. And yeah, it's cool. You press the button, the dash changes, it goes all red and it says you've got 10 seconds left to boost. It's got a countdown timer. Your bolsters on your seat squeeze in to hug you and it all becomes very dramatic. The throttle response becomes all of a sudden instant, and it is all very theatrical, which I do enjoy. But I almost kind of prefer that if that was just on an extra click down on the pedal, because, you know, it is a little bit annoying having to take a hand off the wheel and press that button. That being said though, I do like this 3-spoke steering wheel, because most Genesis cars come with the Hyundai like 2-spoke one, which I'm not a big fan of. But yeah, right, country lane, boost, 10 seconds. Oh my God. God, it's a big old beast to stop. But yeah, I mean, I'm really pressing on now through some rainy conditions, and there is a lot of confidence I've got in this car. But as I say, it's just not as sharp as I would like for a sporty drive. But when are you going to really be doing this? This is absolutely not ideal conditions, and why would you be thrashing around in a sort of 2.3 ton vehicle? It's it's just not what you do, is it? Let's test the old turning circle here. I'm gonna, very, very sorry sir, I'm gonna just quickly turn around in front of your house. My many apologies. Now, the 360 camera is absolutely fantastic, and I have no complaints about that at all. Turning circle is surprisingly good. Yeah, 360 camera, the top-down view stitches everything together sensationally, and you can even make out text on the floor and stuff like that. It really is that good. But yeah, enough of that. Boost. Wow, you see that little wiggle there? Bit of torque steer. It's controllable, but it's it's certainly a little bit sketchy. But that's it. It's nice to have all that power available when you need it. Most of the time you're going to be pottering along and not taking much notice of the amount of power you've got under your foot. But when you do want to, you can literally stamp on it, and just that kick is fantastic. Although I can see my economy going down slightly, so yeah, maybe let's rein that in a little bit. Put her back down into eco mode, shall we? And the seats have relaxed. So I mean, look, I've rambled on for ages about this car, and what's my short verdict then? What's the too long didn't read? Well, I love it. I absolutely love it. I love pretty much all the Genesis cars. They're not perfect, no. And, you know, for me, I do prefer a slightly sportier drive. That being said though, as an all-rounder, as an EV, I do think this is really, really good. And yes, it's about the same sort of money, maybe a little bit more even than a BMW iX3. But unless you're really after a sportier drive, I think this is probably going to be nicer to live with. And it's certainly more exclusive as well. People don't know what it is. People ask about it. People look at it. They think it's a Bentley. You know, it's just got a bit of prestige about it. It's something a little bit different. And I love that a brand like this exists that not only has some fantastic sort of after-sales support and all those extra benefits, but also under the skin, under all of these fancy materials and this, you know, fantastic drivetrain, is really reliable Korean tech from the big brands that we know and love. It's just a fantastic blend. And I wouldn't let it put you off that this isn't one of the big German brands, because honestly, Genesis is here to stay. They're bringing out more and more new stuff all the time, and I'm excited every time I get to spend some time with one. So thank you so much to Genesis UK for sending me out the car, you know, trusting me with a car that is just shy of 80 grand. I really appreciate that, and I appreciate being able to bring it to you guys to watch and enjoy. If you are ever in the market for a car in this price range, please do not ignore this. Don't just go and buy a BMW because everyone else has, or a Mercedes because everyone else has. I really do think this is worth just going out and buying. You know, it's not one of these cars I say, oh, maybe you should put it on your shortlist, but there's other stuff out there that's really good. No, this really is that good. You know, as I say, slightly sharper drive in the BMW. Mercedes maybe has a little bit more fancy tech on the inside and more ambient lighting. It looks a bit more posh. But if you just want a great all-rounder, this is it. So with that, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. What a machine.